Hey y'all. This morning Dana had to go by Walmart to pick up something for work, and she just walked by the toilet paper aisle and she texted me and said, "The fear in people's faces just broke her heart." There's a lot of fear in our world right now. The fear leads to panic and that helpless feeling that everything is out of our control. Well, the reality is that much of this is out of our control. But we don't have to spend our days in fear. I know what you're saying. You're thinking, Jack, well, yeah, that's easy for you to say. And you're right, it is. But I want to give you some things that might help you in this time of fear. Several months ago, I had to go get an MRI on my head, and everything's fine, but I had to go get an MRI on my head. And, big, tough, strong Marine that I am, I thought I'll just go stick my head in this machine and it won't be any big deal. But they put me on this table and they basically cinched my head down inside of this basket, and then they put me in this machine, and all of a sudden with the MRI machine right in front of my face, I realized that I was claustrophobic, and I didn't really even know to the extent to which I was claustrophobic. And I began to panic. And I would tell myself the logical things. Jack, this is silly. Your head's just sticking in a machine. Your feet and your hands are out in the open. But it wasn't logical. It didn't make any sense. My fear was not, it, it wasn't rational. And I really, really struggled with staying in this machine. It was 45 minutes, and it was probably one of the longest 45 minutes of my life. And they give you a little ball for your hand, and they say, if you have to come out of here, just squeeze the ball and we'll stop the test and we'll pull you out. And so I'm holding this ball in my hand, and it's all I can do not to squeeze this ball. The panic was setting in. And I realized that if I didn't do something, I wasn't going to last 4 minutes, much less 45 minutes in this machine. And what I began to realize was that I had to replace my fear with something else, with something good. And so the first thing I began to do, because it ought to be always our first resort, I began to pray. I just began to pray, and I began to ask God to help me, to watch over me, to be there with me. And I knew that He was there. But it didn't matter how much the attendant told me, oh, there's nothing to be afraid of. It did change things. It didn't make me any less afraid. It didn't stop the panic that was beginning to build up in my life. But as I began to replace that fear with a conversation with God, then my fear began to subside. And I began to think about all the things that I love. I began to think about my family, about my wife and my kids and my grandkids. And then I began to think about even things that I love to do, about woodworking and the things that I was making, and playing golf. In my mind, I played a round of golf around the course that I normally play, and I remember the holes, and I did those things. And as I was then beginning to run out of things to think of, I started to sing. And I sang songs in my mind, because you had to remain perfectly still. The great songs and silly songs, and songs that really had no value at all, but they were part of who I am. And as I was doing all these things, finally, the attendant came and he pulled me out of the machine. And he looked at me and he said, I didn't think you were going to make it 30 seconds. And I told him that was the worst time of my life, I think. And I've been through Marine Corps boot camp. What does all this have to do with the time we're living in? Well, there's a lot of people afraid. And maybe you're afraid as well. Maybe you're on the verge of that panic that we've talked about. Replace those things with good things in your life. First of all, pray. Pray. Paul told us to pray without ceasing. Prayer is an ongoing conversation that we have with God that begins in our prayer closet but continues all day long. Pray. Tell God you're afraid. Tell God you're struggling. Tell him you don't have the answers and you're concerned for your family and you're concerned for your job and you're concerned for your country and all of the things. Pray. But one of the things that we need to guard against is isolating ourselves from the people that we love. So as we pray, we also need to love. Now, love may look a little differently. We had a church service yesterday where we didn't hug necks and shake hands, and it was strange. It really was. But we were together, and we were loving one another. And we were also loving our brothers and sisters who couldn't be there with us. And that love looks different in this environment, but it doesn't go away and it's not less important. In fact, it's more important. So maybe we need to be more creative in how we love one another. Maybe we need to begin to write letters again or send emails or send cards, or maybe this is a revolutionary idea. Maybe we need to actually talk to one another over the phone. I know. I'm not talking about texting or Snapchat. I'm talking about actually picking up the phone and calling someone. Forgive my sarcasm, but those kind of things are still available to us, and we need to do that. We need to call our siblings and our loved ones and let them know that they're important in our lives. And then as we begin to fill up our life with prayer and with love, and we also need to remember that we as Christians are here to serve. Now, service looks different right now. We can't do some of the things that we want to do, or maybe even that we're good at. We're going to have to be creative in how we serve people. But there are people out there who are hungry. There are people out there who are struggling. There are people out there who are alone. There are people out there who need Christians to love them through this time because they're afraid and no one's helped them to replace their fear with other things. Remember that our fear does not come from God, that he does not give us a spirit of fear. In fact, his perfect love casts out fear. So fill your life with things that will displace the fear in your life and allow that life to spill over onto others, because just like a virus is contagious, so a life lived for Christ is contagious. Let's spread that to a world that desperately needs it. God bless you.